All right, close your eyes for a second. When you think of Antarctica, what pops into your head? A blinding white, bone-chilling wasteland with a few penguins waddling around like they're rocking tuxedos at a fancy party. Right? Perhaps you're even imagining yourself trapped in a giant freezer where everything is frozen solid, but let's zoom in with your imagination for a hot minute. What if it's not just ice? What do you see then? Probably, more ice. Haha. Just kidding. But for real. Antarctica is the ultimate ice boss of Earth, hoarding a whopping 90% of the planet's glacier ice right here. Some spots have ice stacked up a mile thick, like a colossal ice cream cake no one's brave enough to slice. Now, you might think Antarctica's always been this lonely, frosty place, just snow and howling winds 24/7. Nope. Wrong. Many people assume Antarctica was born as an eternal ice cube, like it was preordained from the dawn of time to be Elsa's kingdom from Frozen. But hold up, way back when, Antarctica was a whole different vibe. It was lush, green, and thriving, like a tropical rainforest where you'd want to swing in for an epic selfie. No ice in sight, just dense trees, weird critters, and a super dramatic, tragic backstory that makes it feel like a lost world straight out of a Hollywood blockbuster. Picture Antarctica today as that lonely uncle, chilling by himself at the far end of the earth with no one to chat with. But listen up. Back in the day, Antarctica was not this isolated loner. Oh no, it was the life of the party, the super social member of the continent crew, always showing up to every global bash, while it's now the lonely continent, not sharing a natural border with anyone. Way back then, Antarctica was positioned higher up, cozying up with the other continents. Simply put, it was the bustling hub of the ancient world. Let's hop in a time machine and zip back a few million years to the Mesozoic era, from 252 to 66 million years ago, when Antarctica was tight with South America and Australia. I mean, it wasn't just close, it was legit connected to these two pals through land bridges, like prehistoric highways. These bridges were open to all kinds of critters, from tiny to massive, using Antarctica as a launch pad to roam the world. And who were the VIPs in this crowd? Dinosaurs. Baby Yup, T. Rex's cousins and their dino buddies were strutting across these bridges like they were hitting up the mall on a weekend. How do we know Antarctica was this lively hotspot? Thanks to some genius scientists who dug around and found sauropod dinosaur skulls in all three places: Antarctica, South America, and Australia. These skulls are like carbon copies, practically identical, proving that these dino species were crisscrossing between continents. That's why we find similar species on continents that are now split apart. If you hopped out of a time machine and landed in Antarctica during the Mesozoic era, what do you think you'd see? A freezing, snow-covered wasteland, swing and a miss. In reality, Antarctica back then was a lush, green paradise, like a tropical resort begging for an Instagram photo shoot. Thanks to its position farther north and the Earth being a giant toaster oven, Antarctica rocked a tropical climate with average temperatures around 12 to 15 degrees Celsius. How'd it pull that off? A cozier spot closer to the equator, sky-high CO2 levels in the atmosphere, and no polar ice to bounce sunlight back into space. With weather that chills in a good way, Antarctica wasn't just home to a few cold-tolerant critters like today's penguins. Oh no, it was a full-on playground for tons of dinosaurs. Take a few steps, and you'd bump into theropods, those sharp-toothed, ferocious hunters, or ankylosaurs, basically prehistoric tanks with armor. Then there were hadrosaurs, the super-cool duck-billed dinos, and sauropods, those long-necked giants you know from Jurassic Park. What about the water? A squad of massive sharks and sea reptiles were splashing around in the mass seas. Honestly, if you got dropped here without a tour guide, you'd think you were starring in a Hollywood blockbuster. Forget the icy, white Antarctica of today. Back then, it was a vibrant, dreamy green masterpiece thanks to warm weather and regular rain. The whole continent was blanketed in dense rainforests. conifers, flowering plants, and ginkgo trees grew like crazy, creating a jaw-dropping scene like you'd wandered into a massive tropical garden. Seriously, if no one told you, you'd never guess this was Antarctica. No ice, no snow, just lush greenery and the roars of dinosaurs. It'd feel like you'd stepped onto an alien planet, not to mention the dinos throwing a wild party all around you. Imagine ancient Antarctica as a hopping dino dance floor, everything grooving along until, boom, a massive asteroid slams into Earth, turning it all into a Netflix-worthy disaster flick that impact probably unleashed a mega tsunami that smashed Antarctica's shores, like the ocean itself was throwing a tantrum. And that's not all. The air got so scorching hot it was like an industrial oven, ready to roast any dino dumb enough to be caught outside. Then what wildfires erupted everywhere, turning the whole continent into a giant bonfire. Honestly, if you were in Antarctica back then, you'd be better off staying home and binge-watching movies, because stepping outside was game over. When the smoke and dust from the impact finally settled, do you think things would chill out? Nope, it only got worse. That asteroid kicked up a ton of sulfur dust and toxic junk, blanketing the sun like someone yanked a thick curtain across it. The result, Earth, including Antarctica, froze in a flash like someone flipped the switch on a planet-sized freezer. One day it's a tropical paradise, the next it's a giant ice box. But here's the plot twist. A lot of people think Antarctica was doomed to be a cursed, icy wasteland forever, like the eternal set of Frozen. Big nope. It didn't just survive, it came back stronger than ever. Forget the cold. Because after the dino disaster, Antarctica got a sizzling makeover, thanks to a phenomenon called the post-Cretaceous super greenhouse effect. Temperatures shot up, like Earth cranked the heater to the max. The secret, a massive dump of CO2 into the atmosphere, from who knows where, like the planet decided to let loose. The result was a toasty Earth, especially Antarctica. During the Paleocene and Eocene epochs in Antarctica, average temps could hit 25 degrees C, like you're kicking back in modern-day Kenya. During an event called the Eocene thermal maximum, Earth hit its hottest point in 100 million years. Antarctica wasn't an icy wasteland anymore, it was more like a tropical island with full-on vacation vibes, even though it had drifted farther south than in dino days. Antarctica was still chilling, not literally, around 60 degrees south, higher than its current spot. That opened the door for a ton of plants to invade the continent, like they saw open land and rushed to plant their flags. These plants wouldn't stand a chance in today's frigid Antarctica, but back then, they turned it into a lush, green paradise. If you got lost in Antarctica during the Paleogene, you'd swear you were at a tropical resort, with swamps, sparkling water, and palm trees waving you in. No icy plains or glaciers in sight, just a scene that'd make you want to set up a coconut stand and chill all day. Think Antarctica back in the day was just a boring, icy wasteland with howling winds, like a movie nobody bothers watching. Think again during the Paleogene. This place was a rocking playground for bizarre and badass creatures. But don't start dreaming of a chill picnic vibe if you set foot in Antarctica back then. It wasn't the spot for casually sipping bubble tea. With ferocious predators and lush green landscapes, Antarctica was like an action-packed blockbuster. And trust me, you don't want to be the side character today. The biggest land animal in Antarctica is some tiny bug, like a wingless ant. Totally harmless. But back then, oh boy, brace yourself for something way scarier. Not dinosaurs, no joke. After the non-bird dinos went extinct, a new crew took over, kind of like dinosaurs, but with their swagger. Meet the terror birds, scientifically called Forus racidae, the ultimate prehistoric ninjas. You might be shocked because these guys are famous in South America. But guess what? They showed up in Antarctica too, thanks to a land bridge connecting Antarctica to South America, which came and went until about 40 million years ago. These birds stormed in and caused a ruckus. with curved, razor-sharp beaks and legs built like track stars, sporting giant sickle-shaped claws. They could stab or pin down prey like nobody's business. They're like the raptors from the movies, total goosebump material. These Antarctic terror birds, still waiting for an official name, might just be the ultimate boss you'd never want to run into. Picture a creature like a jacked-up raccoon, the size of a male ostrich, standing about 2.5 meters tall and weighing over 130 kilos. In simple terms, it's like 3 wolves stacked on top of each other. But don't think they were slowpokes. With their top-tier legs, they could sprint faster than the wind, clocking over 50 kilometers an hour. Good luck outrunning them. These were hardcore predators, patrolling the jungles and grasslands, ready to snatch anything that caught their eye. Real talk if you saw one charging. Your best bet was to climb a tree or pray for a miracle. If the scariest predator in Antarctica today is just a bug, you might wonder, what did these terror birds eat to get so beefy? The secret's in that land bridge to South America. Not only did the birds migrate over, but a whole army of mammals did too, turning Antarctica into a massive all-you-can-eat buffet. Fossils from the Letta region, now Seymour Island, from the Paleocene to Eocene, show just how lively this place was. Not all these creatures lived at the same time, but they paint a vivid picture of a green, thriving Antarctica. Thanks to the connection with South America, you'd see mammals you'd swear belonged only there, not in Antarctica. Among these mammals was a super cool group called Astopians, like rhinos but extinct, grass-munching heavyweights of the continent. Only 2 species are confirmed in Antarctica, Triona stylops and Anodon. Both had weird, massive teeth, but don't worry, they were strictly into plants, not meat. Their sizes varied, some were as small as penguins, but some Anodon are guessed to have weighed up to half a ton, though that's just an estimate. Then there's Notiolus, possibly the biggest land animal in Antarctica since the dino days, with adults tipping the scales at 400 kilos. Almost as heavy as a modern bison. They thrived by chowing down on tasty flowering plants that grew everywhere back then. These Estonians weren't part of the Strapatheria group, but were Theops in the extinct Ulid order, and some were straight-up weird. Take Victor Lonia, a smaller mammal with a freaky high-up nose, like a pasta tube snorkel. That nose might have worked like an extra hand, grabbing plants they couldn't otherwise reach. Recently, folks think it was more like the gripping lips of a moose or the fancy nose of a saiga antelope, filtering dust, cooling them in summer and keeping them warm in winter. These were small but seriously cool critters. And that's not all. Antarctica had surprise guests, marsupials. When you think of marsupials, you probably picture Australia's kangaroos or koalas, but they evolved first in South America, then hopped over to Antarctica via that land bridge. From there, they even made it to Australia, since the 2 continents were buddies for part of the Cenozoic. 3 marsupial groups are known to have hit Antarctica. The first is mysterious, barely known. The second was more diverse, filling all sorts of roles in the ecosystem. The third, Monito delante, meaning little mountain monkey in Spanish, still lives in Argentina and Chile and is closer to Aussie marsupials. Plus, there was Madden, or the saber-toothed squirrel, named for its massive chompers, likely a top-tier insect eater that survived the KT extinction thanks to its small size and flexible diet. These critters were the perfect feast for the terror birds, turning Antarctica into a high-stakes survival arena full of drama. Picture today's Antarctic Ocean cold, a few penguins zipping by, and the occasional whale popping up like a VIP guest star. But guess what? The prehistoric Antarctic Ocean was a straight-up horror movie. If you dove into those waters millions of years ago, you'd want to get out fast, with giant crocodiles, ferocious whales, and massive sharks. It was like a water park where your only instinct was to run for your life. Nowadays, Antarctica screams penguins, but crocodiles sounds like a joke. Yet, back in the day, they were the undisputed bosses. Paleontologists used to guess crocs lived in Antarctica because of the land bridge and warm climate, but they had no solid proof. Then, boom, one day they found a massive fossilized skeleton from the Eocene, A perfect match for both living and extinct croc species. These weren't cute little crocs. Oh no, they were monster-sized, stretching up to 7 meters long, 15% bigger than the largest modern saltwater croc, and 35% larger than your average croc. Including semi-aquatic species, they were the top land predators. They lurked in freshwater, brackish, and even saltwater, just like modern saltwater crocs. With that size, nothing was off their menu. There's even evidence of another croc species that munched on pigeons, but details on that one are hazy as morning fog. Bottom line, when Antarctica was lush and green, pretty much everything was croc food. When you think of Antarctica, penguins come to mind as those adorable, waddling cuties braving the cold. But you'll be shocked to learn they lived in Antarctica when it was hot as an oven, and they were not as cuddly as today's version's prehistoric penguins might have evolved off the coasts of Australia and New Zealand about 60 million years ago, then migrated to Antarctica, where they partied hard. Today, only 2 penguin species call Antarctica home, but back in the Paleogene, there were 16 species, each with its flair, like an all-star lineup and their size. Forget tiny, these were no small fries. 3 species were dubbed giant penguins. Compared to today's emperor penguin, which weighs 45 kilos and stands 1.5 meters tall, these were legit giants. Anthropornis and Dip towered up to 2 meters and weighed between 108 and 116 kilos. In simple terms, they were bigger than leopards. Getting slapped by one would hurt. And in the water, they glided like Olympic swimmers, holding their breath for over 40 minutes, ready to shred fish, squid, and mollusks. Why so big? Probably to save energy, but even so, they couldn't dodge crocs or other underwater dangers. Today's Antarctic seas have whales, but back then it was a monster mash. 2 whale genera from the llama group were downright terrifying. First up, Bacilla, a top-tier predator that looked like a giant snake, stalking prey in shallow waters. With massive skulls and razor-sharp teeth, they could pierce skin, muscle, and even bone. A fossilized jawbone shows they stretched up to 12 meters, ready to gulp down anything in reach, including 3-meter-long giant sea turtles, bigger than any turtle alive today. Then there's Lanocetus, a whale whose babies were the size of the biggest adult orcas. The adults, they could rival humpback whales. Unlike today's chill whales, these had teeth and could both hunt and filter feed like modern minke whales. Their menu was wild fish, penguins, sea turtles, even sharks. Nothing was safe. Speaking of sharks, prehistoric Antarctica was like ancient Australia with an endless shark roster: requiem, goblin, gulper, sand angel, and saw sharks. There were even extinct basking sharks, small sharks, ancestors of makos, and the legendary Otis, like a mini megalodon. Otis suavi hit 6 meters, while Otis arculus reached 9.5 meters. These were coastal hunting champs, clashing with whales and chowing down on fish, turtles, and even other sharks. The Antarctic seas, back then, a chaotic battleground where penguins and every other creature lived on edge. Picture prehistoric Antarctica as a bustling international airport, where birds from all over the world gathered to take flight. It wasn't just cute, waddling penguins stealing the show. There was a whole squad of super cool birds turning Antarctica into their stage during the Paleogene. From species that looked like they hopped out of a cartoon to straight-up terrifying ones, these birds tell an epic tale of evolution. Some scientists even believe this is where the first modern birds took off, with Vagavus, a species that didn't make it past the Mesozoic but left a massive legacy. Its presence shows just how crucial Antarctica was in making birds the rock stars of the animal kingdom back then. Antarctica was home to some top-tier flyers. You'd see falcons, sea eagles, albatrosses, and petrels soaring through the skies like a jaw-dropping Air Force stunt team. But the brightest and weirdest star was Doris, from the extinct Pelagornithidae family. This bird was unmissable, thanks to its freaky teeth, or rather, bony jaw protrusions that made it look like it escaped a horror flick. They weren't actual teeth. just jaw extensions giving off serious creepy vibes. Most Doris were giants, with wingspans stretching 5 to 6 meters, about the size of a small plane, or, if you want a cooler comparison, a pteranodon from dino days. But don't freak out, their fossils are fragile as paper, so they probably just glided over the water, sniping fish and dolphins like a seasoned sharpshooter. In short, Antarctica back then was a bird paradise that any animal lover would want to visit, but you'd better pack some armor. This lush, bird-filled, creature-packed Antarctica sounds like a dream. Right? Well, every party's got to end sometime. By the late Eocene, things crashed harder than a cliffhanger in a drama series. If you were in Antarctica back then, unless you were a super tough penguin or a lucky bird, you were in for a rough ending. Mother Nature seemed to have a personal vendetta against this continent, unleashing a string of disasters all at once. Antarctica got completely cut off, isolated from the world as the Drake Passage opened between it and South America, and the Tasmanian Passage formed with Australia. Are the animals stuck there trapped like they were locked on an island with no boats out? It doesn't stop there. For over 200 million years, Earth was a giant heater, but around 34 million years ago, everything flipped. Temperatures plummeted faster than you can say brr, and, ironically, Antarctica's isolation was to blame. As those passages opened, the Antarctic circumpolar current formed a cold water wall circling the continent, blocking warm water from reaching the shores and sucking up CO2 like a planet-sized air purifier. Combine that with Antarctica drifting farther south, and ice started creeping in, kicking off the brutal ice age that, technically, we're still living in. This cold snap wiped out most native life, with changes happening so fast that nobody had time to adapt. The ice also obliterated habitats on a massive scale, like nature hit the reset button on the whole continent. Still, the story didn't end right away. Some ice-free pockets remained, where survivors clung to hope, but that hope was a total fake-out. Over the next 7 million years, ice spread like a giant snow monster, swallowing nearly the entire continent. To add insult to injury, the thicker the ice got, the more it reflected sunlight, making Antarctica even colder. The result? A permanently frozen continent barely changed to this day. Sure, we've got fossils from the Lawama region that tell a bit of the story, but who knows what's hiding under the ice in the rest of Antarctica? Digging for more would be some serious hard work, and honestly, I'd rather stay cozy and watch a documentary. Thanks for joining me on this wild ride. Catch you on the next adventure.